The sector was peaceful. Too peaceful for almost 900 galactic cycles. The Galactic Empire ruled over it without any real challenge. The star routes were smooth, the patrols were routine, and the smaller civilizations quietly obeyed the rules the Empire laid down. On the edge of this sector, there was an old but active outpost called Varel 9. It wasn't very special, just a small watch station, half forgotten by the Empire's high command. The officers there were bored, the crew lazy, and nothing exciting had happened in decades. Lieutenant Krell was one of those officers. He had been stationed there for 6 years. Every day felt the same scan the area, log the ship traffic, send routine reports. Nothing ever changed, but that day something did, and it changed everything. It started with a simple blip on the scanner. Krell almost ignored it. He was sipping his morning drink when the scanner flashed red for just a second. Usually, this kind of thing meant a pirate ship with a broken transponder or a smuggler trying to sneak past. But when Krell checked the coordinates again, the signal was still there. He zoomed in. The object was big, very big, bigger than any civilian ship, and the energy readings didn't match anything in the Empire's ship database. At first, Krell assumed the scanner was malfunctioning. He reset it, ran a diagnostic, and checked again. The object was still there, slowly moving into the edge of the sector. No identification code, no transponder, no hails. That was odd. Empire law required all ships to send ID signals while entering controlled space. This one didn't. That alone was enough to report. Krell forwarded the scan data to Command Center Level 4, but he was curious now. He ran the shape recognition algorithm to try and match the design of the ship. The program ran for a full minute before stopping with a strange result. Match not found. Closest resemblance classified. Red level access required. That line sent a chill down Krell's spine. Red level access meant deep military archive stuff even high-ranking officers weren't allowed to see without special permission. He tried again. Same result. He stared at the screen, heart beating faster. This wasn't a pirate. It wasn't a smuggler. The object kept moving, slowly but confidently, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Krell broke protocol and sent a direct priority alert to Sector Command. For 5 minutes, there was silence. Then the response came, in 3 words: hold position. Observe. Only the message confused him. No backup, no instructions, just observe. Something wasn't right. Meanwhile, higher up in the Empire's command structure, alarms were quietly starting to go off. The signal had reached military control in Sector 12. A security analyst named Rollo noticed a file tagged with human signature anomaly. That word human hadn't been used in real military discussions in hundreds of years. Rollo hesitated before opening the secure archive. Most junior officers didn't even believe in the old stories about humans. It was just myth, rumor, exaggeration. Humans were ancient beings that burned bright and died fast, lost in their own wars centuries ago. The Empire had told everyone they had gone extinct or vanished into deep space. No one had seen them in generations. Many thought they were just ghost stories told to frighten young cadets. But the scan from Varel 9 matched something deep in the old records, something terrifying. The shape, the radiation trail, even the unusual silence of the ship matched a pattern stored under the title, Terran-class warship, designation unknown. That ship type was not supposed to exist anymore. Only a few top generals had even seen the file, and it was locked under the highest security level. Sector Command didn't make an announcement. They didn't warn the public. But internally, everything changed. Emergency protocols were activated. Monitoring satellites were turned toward the unknown ship. Quietly, 5 destroyers were placed on standby, and a name began to spread through encrypted channels. Human ship at Varel 9. Krell noticed that his access to the ship's data was suddenly blocked. Someone from Central Command had locked the file. That had never happened before. It meant this was serious. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, this thing was calmly entering their space, completely ignoring the Empire's laws. He kept watching as the signal grew stronger. He could now see parts of the vessel on the high-res scan. It was like nothing he had seen. It wasn't sleek or polished like Empire ships. It was rough, powerful, heavy armor plating, exposed weapon ports, and energy signatures so high they didn't even make sense. The design was terrifying, because it was threatening, but because it didn't follow any known logic. It looked like a relic of war that shouldn't exist anymore. Then came the silence. No transmissions, no movement, just the slow, deliberate approach of the ship. Krell's hands were sweating. He had read about legends, rumors that once, long ago, a single human warship had faced down an entire Empire fleet and walked away without a scratch. He had laughed at those stories. They were just myths. But now, staring at the impossible, readings on his screen, he wasn't so sure. In the capital of the sector, at the Imperial Senate, the first rumors started spreading among the highest ranks. Someone leaked a phrase, unknown warship, Terran origin suspected. That was all it took. The word Terran hit like a thunderbolt. Senators whispered. Military advisors demanded answers. The Emperor's Security Council called a closed-door meeting. Panic hadn't started yet, but fear had. People in power began to remember stories they were never supposed to tell. About the time a fleet vanished in a star system after receiving a distress call. About the ships that were found later cut clean in half, without signs of a battle. And all reports had one thing in common. The energy signatures matched ancient Terran tech. The Empire had buried those stories, said they were accidents or sabotage. But now something from that forgotten past had returned. Or maybe it had never left. Back on Varel 9, Krell wasn't told anything. His feed to command was silenced, but he noticed something strange nearby. Ships were changing course. Patrols were rerouted away from the incoming object. Even civilian traffic was suddenly being redirected without explanation. Krell stared at the path of the ship. It wasn't heading toward any military base, any planet, or known trade route. It was heading straight through empty space. No clear destination. Just passing through, unless, unless it was watching, unless it was testing something, or searching for something hidden. Krell stood from his chair and looked. Out the viewing window, space looked the same, quiet, endless, peaceful. But now it felt different, like something ancient and powerful had opened its eyes again. The Galactic Empire didn't panic often. It was proud, strong, overconfident. But something about that silent ship made even the proudest generals hesitate, because no one knew what it wanted. No one knew why it was here, and no one, not even the Emperor himself, was ready for the answer to one terrifying question. Why is a human warship in this sector? And if one had arrived, how many more were watching? The calm was ending. Something forgotten had returned. Something old, something powerful. And this time, it wasn't here to ask for permission. In the deep heart of the Galactic Empire, inside the shining walls of the High Council chamber, Panic was building, but quietly. The outer worlds didn't know yet. The citizens of the Empire were still going about their day, smiling in markets, flying their ships through trade routes, and believing they were safe. But behind closed doors, something had cracked. The Empire had spent centuries pretending it was in control of everything, that nothing could surprise it, that its rule was unshakable. But now, something impossible had entered their space. And the fear wasn't just because of what it was. The fear came from what it reminded them of. The word had already spread. Among the top generals, Terran class, some denied it. Others stayed silent. Only a few, the oldest among them, recognized what that meant. They remembered, and what they remembered had been buried for a reason. One of those people was General Vos. He was old now, not in command anymore, sitting behind a desk filled with medals and silence. Most officers respected him, but few talked to him anymore. He had served during the days when the Empire wasn't yet all-powerful, when it was still, fighting for control. And during those days, he had seen something. Something the Empire erased from all public records. He was sitting in his private quarters when the alert came in. A secure message marked Eyes Only. It contained a scan of the unknown ship. Vostarek looked at it for a long time, silent. Then he stood up, walked to a locked cabinet, and opened it with his personal code one that hadn't been used in almost 100 years. Inside was a black data cube. He placed it into a reader and watched the old footage. The recording was grainy, but the shape was clear. A massive dark ship drifting silently through space, surrounded by Empire cruisers. Then, without firing a single shot, the human vessel activated a field. All Empire ships froze in space, powerless. Then the recording ended. He remembered that day clearly. He had been a young officer. 20 Empire warships had tried to stop that one human vessel. Not only had they failed, they had never even understood what kind of technology they were facing. After the encounter, orders came from above. Say nothing, tell no one. The Empire decided to hide it, erase the records, and call the missing fleet an accident. Only 3 people survived that incident. Vostarek was one of them. Now seeing that same ship design entering their sector, he realized something terrible. They had never been alone. The humans hadn't died. They hadn't disappeared. They had simply ... waited back in the council chambers. The leaders argued in circles. Some said it was a fake. Others believed it was a rebel trick. A few even joked nervously that someone had dressed up a pirate ship to look like an old human warship. But then the scan reports arrived. Energy readings off the charts. Weapon systems that didn't match any known design. Power cores that seemed impossible. No known civilization had this kind of ship. And the silence was the worst part. The ship didn't respond to calls, didn't send messages, didn't make demands. It just floated through space calmly, as if it had nothing to fear. That was the real threat. Empires are used to dealing with enemies that shout, demand, threaten, or attack. But a silent enemy, a patient one, that is what makes powerful empires tremble, because silence means confidence. Silence means control. And suddenly, the Empire realized something they had tried to forget. Humans had always been like that. A few thousand years ago, humans had risen fast, too fast. They had shocked the galaxy by building ships and weapons that made no sense. The Empire was still expanding at the time. They saw humans as a threat, but an unstable one. So when the humans vanished from galactic politics, the Empire thought they had collapsed, destroyed themselves with their own power. That's the version the Empire taught in schools. The humans were powerful but foolish, brave but self-destructive, curious but too emotional, and that, in the end, they paid the price for their chaos. But inside the Empire's deepest vaults, there was another truth, one that only the most powerful knew. The humans hadn't destroyed themselves. They had simply left. Why they left, no one knew. Where they went, no one could say. But for centuries, stories kept slipping through. Rumors, whispers, broken ships discovered in deep space, cut clean by unknown weapons. Fleets that went missing near ancient ruins. Signals that played for hours in long-dead dialects. Every time something like that happened, the Empire would send cleanup crews, erase the records, and threaten anyone who talked, because they knew humanity wasn't extinct, just ... hidden. And now, the panic was returning. Vostarek left his quarters and demanded an emergency meeting with the security division. He told them what he remembered. At first, they didn't believe him. Then he played the black data cube, the one recording the silent disabling of 20 Empire warships. The room went dead quiet. They asked him the same question over and over. Again, what do they want? He didn't know, but he said something that chilled everyone in the room. If that ship is here now, it means they want us to see them. In secret, Empire scientists were ordered to scan every part of the vessel. They tried to decode its systems, understand its purpose, but the ship wasn't giving anything away. It just floated, protected and watching. And that's what made people nervous. Empires aren't used to being watched. Back on Varel 9, Lieutenant Krell noticed changes in command traffic. Unusual encrypted orders. Civilians being quietly evacuated from nearby systems. The Empire was preparing for something, but no one would say what. Krell couldn't stop thinking about the ship. Why here? Why now? What did it mean? A quiet fear spread across the Empire's inner circles. What if the ship was just the beginning? What if others were hiding, waiting to see how the Empire reacted? What if they had been watching all along? In old human stories, there was a saying, "The eyes of humanity never close." That phrase had appeared in intercepted human transmissions. Long ago at the time, the Empire had laughed. Now, no one was laughing. And then came the strangest thing. All the Empire's long-range, monitoring probes, thousands of tiny satellites placed throughout the galaxy, started receiving interference. Not damage, not destruction, just ... static. Silence, blackouts in patterns that didn't make sense. Like someone was telling the Empire, "We know what you're watching and we're watching back." Inside the military, some began to whisper the unthinkable. What if the humans had never disappeared? What if they simply grew too advanced to be seen? The Empire had always believed in strength, in order, in fear. It ruled through control. But the humans had always been something else: chaotic, unpredictable, driven by emotion and strange logic. The Empire had studied them and still failed to understand them. And now they were back. No weapons fired, no war declared. Just a ship drifting quietly through their space. A reminder, a message, and maybe a warning. Vostarek stood before the council and said something that many found difficult to hear, but none could deny. We didn't destroy them. We didn't outlive them. We didn't outsmart them. They let us believe they were gone, but now they've shown their face again, and they chose when. There was silence after that. The Empire was afraid, because the question was no longer what. Is a human warship doing here? The question was, what comes next? And why now? And most terrifying of all, ... How long have they been watching? In the far side of Sector 12, 5 warships of the Galactic Empire slowly moved in formation, gliding through the cold silence of space like hungry predators. Each of them was heavily armed top of the line, equipped with plasma cannons, laser arrays, and defensive shields strong enough to survive direct hits. These ships were not just any ships. They belonged to the Empire's elite 7th Fleet, known for their speed, discipline, and brutal efficiency. But today, despite their power, they were nervous. All of them were hunting one target, an unknown vessel. No official name, no ID, no known commander, but its design was unmistakable. It was Terran, and that single word had shaken the Empire. Leading the fleet was Admiral Solvik, a strict and experienced officer known for never retreating. He had faced pirates, rebels, and even rogue AI fleets, but he had never faced a ghost. That's what this mission felt like, hunting a ghost from the past that had suddenly appeared from the shadows of deep space. As the fleet closed in, tension grew. The warships surrounded the Terran vessel at a safe distance. No sudden moves, no aggression, yet. Admiral Solvik stood on the command bridge of the flagship Vindicator, staring at the display. The Terran ship looked strange, unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't beautiful like the Empire's designs. It was brutal. Black metal, sharp lines, and layers of thick armor. It looked like a beast built for survival, not beauty. No lights, no symbols, no windows. It was just there, silent still, but powerful. Salvik gave the first command, "Hail the vessel." The communications officer tried once, then again, then 20 more times, using all known galactic languages, emergency codes, and standard frequencies. The ship didn't respond. No sound, no movement. It didn't even seem to care they were there. That silence was louder than any battle. Admiral Solvik narrowed his eyes. "Activate targeting systems," he said. His crew hesitated. That meant locking weapons. It was a warning. Not a shot, but still a threat. The moment the targeting systems came online, something unexpected happened. The Terran ship moved, only slightly, a small shift in position. It wasn't preparing for battle. It wasn't charging weapons. It was waking up. Lights blinked on small, cold white pulses across its surface, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, rising. Then, before anyone could speak, a transmission came through. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was calm, emotionless, and spoken in perfect galactic standard. "This sector is under observation. Do not interfere." That was it. One line. Admiral Solvik froze. His crew exchanged nervous looks. The voice didn't sound synthetic. It didn't sound alien. It sounded human. Ancient, controlled, but still human. The message repeated once, then silence again. This was not a warning of attack. It was a line drawn in space. A simple command. Stay away. Admiral Solvik didn't back down. The Empire never backed down. He ordered all ships to maintain battle formation. He wanted to show strength, but secretly he was worried. Suddenly, sensors lit up. The Terran ship activated its systems. Not its weapons, not its engines. Something else. A pulse. It wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. No explosion, no visible beam. Just a pulse of energy that spread out like a ripple through space. And then, everything went dark. One by one, the Empire ships began to lose power. First weapons, then shields, then engines. Lights dimmed, consoles blinked out, communications were cut. Even artificial gravity faltered for a moment. On the Vindicator, officers scrambled, hitting buttons, rebooting systems, but nothing worked. It was as if the ships had been frozen in time. No damage, no one hurt, just powerless. Admiral Solvik couldn't believe what he was seeing. They hadn't even been fired upon. The Terran ship had simply shown its control. In one breath, it had taken away the strength of 5 of the most powerful warships in the Empire. It was not an attack, it was a message. We don't want to fight, but we can end it if we must. Within the ships, the crews were terrified. Soldiers whispered that this was proof the stories were true, that the humans had become something beyond technology, that they had evolved into something the Empire didn't understand, maybe couldn't understand. Back at Central Command, when the live feeds went dark, alarms rang. High-ranking officials were confused and angry. Were they destroyed? Someone shouted. No, the technician replied. They're still there, just silent. Emergency signals were sent. Drones were dispatched to scan the area. From a distance, everything looked normal. The Terran ship still floated calmly in the center, untouched. The 5 Empire warships surrounded it like statues, alive but motionless. After 12 long minutes, the systems began rebooting. First on the outer ships, then, one by one, all 5 ships returned to life. But nothing was the same. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. They had just been shown a level of control and technology that went beyond understanding. And the most terrifying part, the Terran ship didn't even try hard. It was like someone swatting flies without standing up. Back on the Vindicator, Admiral Solvik received another message. This time, it was not a warning. It was a simple statement. The observation will continue. Do not interfere again. Solvik wanted to fight. He had trained all his life to face threats with force. But this wasn't war. This was a lesson. A warning from a species that had once disappeared into the dark, and now returned without fear. The fleet slowly pulled back. Orders came from high command. Hold distance. Do not engage. The 5 ships moved away from the Terran vessel like frightened animals backing away from a lion. The Terran ship didn't follow. It just turned, slightly like it was shifting its attention to something far away. Maybe something the Empire couldn't even detect. It wasn't running. It wasn't hiding. It had no fear of the Empire. And that was the real victory. Word spread quickly through the military. Everyone heard what happened. The crew spoke in hushed voices. The phrase "they let us live" was repeated again and again, in hidden circles. Some officers began asking dangerous questions. If this is one ship, how many more are there? If they can disable a fleet with one pulse, what else can they do? And most importantly, why did they come now? In the political halls of the Empire, leaders tried to spin the story. They told the public it was a test gone wrong, that no one was hurt, that everything was under control. But behind those closed doors, fear grew. This wasn't a war. This wasn't diplomacy. This was something new, something old returning in a form no one was ready for. And the message from the Terran ship still echoed in their minds. This sector is under observation. That meant they had eyes. That meant they had knowledge. And it meant they had a plan. No demands, no battles, just presence. The Empire had ruled through strength. But now they had met something stronger, not because it wanted to destroy, but because it didn't need to. Empires are used to being feared, but the humans didn't fear them. They had returned not to conquer, but to remind them who truly holds the higher ground in the shadows of the stars. The Terran ship had done what no one believed was possible. It stopped the Empire's most elite fleet without firing a single shot. It didn't destroy, it didn't kill, it didn't even damage. It simply proved it could take control whenever it wanted, and then it waited back on the edge of Sector 12, where the stars flickered like dying candles. The human warship floated in silence. No more warnings, no more messages, but its presence alone was enough to change everything. Now, the Empire was no longer focused on destroying the ship. They wanted to understand it. Why had it come here? What did it want? Why now? Then something happened that no one expected. A private encrypted message appeared in the comm system at Outpost Station Vorel 9, the same station where Lieutenant Krell had first spotted the ship. It didn't come through normal channels. It bypassed all Imperial firewalls, security levels, and protocols. It went directly to one terminal. A message, plain, simple, to Dr. Elari Vex. That name hadn't been spoken in decades. Dr. Elari Vex was not a soldier. She was not part of the government anymore. Years ago, she had been one of the Empire's brightest minds, a scientist who studied ancient civilizations, deep space signals, and the ruins of extinct species. But she had fallen out of favor. She had made dangerous discoveries, asked too many questions, and pushed too close to the truth about humanity's early encounters. The Empire had silenced her, called her theories lies, and exiled her quietly. She disappeared into isolation, living in a hidden colony on a cold moon. But the Terran ship had called her by name. When the message reached Central Command, the room froze. Who was Dr. Elari Vex to them? A forgotten name, a shadow from the past. But the humans remembered her. That meant something. That meant she knew something. A black transport was immediately dispatched. Agents found her in her small observatory, still studying the stars. When they told her a Terran ship had appeared, and it was asking for her, she didn't look surprised. I always knew they'd come back, she whispered. She was brought to Vorel 9 under heavy guard. The officers there treated her like a prisoner, but deep down they were afraid of her. A woman exiled by the Empire, now being summoned by the most powerful ship in known space. They gave her a private room. One screen, one chair, one incoming message, still waiting to be played. She sat down, placed her hand on the scanner, and the message began. No one else heard what the Terran ship said to her. The audio was encrypted. The video was locked to her eyes only. For several minutes, she watched silently. Her expression changed. Shock, then awe, then fear. When the message ended, she sat still for a long time. The officers rushed in. What did they say? They demanded. What did they want? Dr. Vex looked at them with tired eyes and said quietly, "They are not here for war. They are searching. Searching. For what?" She stood slowly. Something ancient. Something they lost a long time ago. Something we've buried without knowing its meaning. The Empire was confused. The officers demanded a full report. She refused to speak in front of them. Instead, she requested a meeting with the High Council. A week later, she stood in front of the most powerful people in the Empire and revealed what she had learned. They're looking for the remnants of the First Accord. She said. Confusion spread in the room. The First Accord, that was a myth, a legend, a rumor from long before the Empire even existed. Dr. Vex explained. thousands of years ago, before the Empire rose, before the galaxy was divided, there had been a secret alliance. A small group of species who shared knowledge, peace, and dangerous technologies. The humans were part of it. Back then, the humans were still new to space. But they learned fast, too fast. They discovered something the others couldn't understand. A type of quantum field technology connected to thought, memory, and time. They called it the Echo device. No one knew exactly what it did, but it was powerful, dangerous. So the Accord broke it into pieces and scattered them across the galaxy, and one piece, Dr. Vex said, was hidden in Sector 12. Humans are not here to start a war, she said. They're here to find that piece. The council exploded in anger. That's impossible. That's just a fairy tale. But one general leaned forward. Why did they send a warship for a fairy tale? That question hit hard. Dr. Vex looked at them. Because they know we would try to stop them, and they didn't come to ask. The Empire's fear began to take a new shape. This wasn't just about a ship. It was about something much deeper. What if the humans had never vanished? What if they had simply outgrown violence? What if they had spent centuries learning how to move through space without being seen? What if they had evolved beyond war but not beyond defense? And now they had returned. Not to conquer, to recover, something the Empire had accidentally built over, buried, forgotten, or maybe hidden on purpose. The Council began to argue. We must stop them. If we attack, they'll destroy us. Then we let them take what they want. Dr. Vex said something that silenced the entire room. They don't want revenge. They don't want our planets. They don't care about our empire. They care about something much older, something sacred. And if we try to lie, or block them, or interfere again, they will not stop us gently next time. The words sank deep into everyone's bones. After hours of debate, the Empire decided to do something it had never done before. They sent a message to the Terran ship, short, honest, we will not interfere. There was no reply, not at first, but the next day the Terran ship moved for the first time in days. It adjusted its course, heading directly for an empty region of space, one with no stars, no planets, no life, just silence. Empire scientists checked the maps. That area had once held a mining station long ago, but it had been shut down centuries earlier. Nothing valuable remained, or so they thought. As the ship moved closer, strange signals began to appear in the sector. Old frequencies. Songs that sounded like data mixed with memory. The same signals Dr. Vex had studied for years. The same ones. The Empire had always ignored. The humans hadn't come blindly. They had followed a trail that led here, now, to this exact time and place, and still they said nothing. No more messages. No demands. Just movement. But to the Empire, it said everything. The human warship was not a threat. It was a key to something the Empire didn't even know it had locked away. And as it drifted through the shadows of Sector 12, scanning the stars, searching for the Echo device, one truth became clear to everyone. The humans were never gone. They were simply waiting, watching, and when they finally moved, they did not ask for help. They did not ask for permission. They simply came, and now the Empire stood in silence, watching them back, afraid to blink, afraid to speak, because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the enemy who attacks, but the one who remembers. The human warship stayed in Sector 12 for 6 more days. It did not move fast. It did not change course. It simply floated, silent and calm, as if it belonged there. No one from the Empire dared to go near it again. After what happened to the fleet, how 5 powerful warships were shut down without even being touched, the message had become clear. This was not a normal enemy. This was something else. The warship made no demands. It sent no threats. It did not try to speak to anyone again. It just scanned space slowly, its sensors moving in quiet patterns. On the surface, it looked like a simple search. But deep inside the Empire, leaders knew this was something much bigger. Dr. Ilari Vex stayed on Varel 9 during these days. She watched the ship every hour, trying to guess its next move. She knew what it was looking for. The Echo device, the ancient piece of forgotten technology that was left behind when the first Accord broke apart. It had been hidden in this part of space long before the Empire ever existed. And the Empire had built over it, mined the moons around it, and finally abandoned it, never knowing what lay beneath their feet. Dr. Vex had warned the Council that the humans were not here to fight. But that didn't mean they were harmless. They had returned not for war, but for something sacred to them. And if the Empire tried to stop them again, they would not be gentle. So the Empire stepped back, quietly, carefully, in the following days. Something strange started happening. Empire scout ships near the edges of Sector 12 began receiving signals. They were soft, like whispers, old audio patterns, strange musical tones, half-decoded messages from the past. At first, they thought it was static or interference. But then the pattern repeated, again and again. The scientists brought the data to Dr. Vex. Her eyes widened. "It's calling to them," she whispered. "The device, it's still alive." The Echo device was not a weapon. Not exactly. It was a memory engine, built with quantum technology far beyond what the Empire understood. It could store thoughts, knowledge, and even echoes of emotion from entire civilizations. When the first Accord ended, the humans had hidden one piece of it here, deep in a forgotten moon's core. It had been silent for centuries, until now. The presence of the Terran ship had somehow activated it. The humans knew where to look. The ship turned toward a small grey moon named Unloved and long ignored. But the way the ship moved now, it was different. Slow, respectful, like it was approaching a grave. Satellite cameras watched closely. The Terran ship didn't land. Instead, it released a small probe, black, smooth, and silent like the ship. Itself, it entered the moon's crust through an invisible tunnel. No explosions, no force, just precision. Inside that moon, under layers of stone and time, the probe found what it was looking for, the heart of the device, and something began to change. Lights flickered in long-dead ruins. Ancient machines slowly hummed to life. The moon itself began to pulse, softly, like a heartbeat. The scientists on Varel 9 recorded strange signals rising from the surface, words in languages that no longer existed. Pictures formed in energy waves, images of people who had died thousands of years ago. Children playing, cities floating, ships flying side by side in peace. Memories, echoes. It was not just a machine, it was a story, a message from the past. The humans had not returned for power or territory. They had come to retrieve a part of their lost truth, a piece of history buried in the silence of the galaxy, back in the capital of the Empire. The Council watched everything with growing fear. but also curiosity. For the first time, they saw humans not as monsters from forgotten wars, but as something more, something older, something deeply connected to the stars. But not everyone was at peace with this. Some high-ranking military leaders pushed for action. "We can't just let them take it," one general shouted. "What if it's a weapon? What if they use it against us?" But others said no. "We already tried to stop them, and they didn't destroy us. They disabled our fleet and left us alive. That was mercy. If we act again, they won't be so kind." It was a moment of decision, and the Empire did something no one expected. They stayed silent. They didn't stop the humans. They didn't attack. They simply watched for 2 more days. The human ship remained above the moon while the probe worked below. And then, without warning, the signal stopped. The light inside the moon went dark. The heartbeat ended. Whatever the humans had come for, they had found it. The probe returned to the ship. The Terran vessel powered up. But again, not for attack. Not for war. It turned slowly and began to leave. No goodbyes, no threats, just quiet movement into the black sea of space. On Varel 9, Lieutenant Krell watched it disappear across the stars. He had been there from the beginning. He had seen the fear, the power, the silence. And now, as it vanished, he felt something strange in his chest. Respect, not because the ship was powerful, but because it had shown restraint. It could have destroyed them, but it didn't, because it had come for something greater than war. It had come for memory. A few days later, Dr. Ilari Vex left Varel 9. She wasn't forced out this time. She left on her own. The council had offered her anything: power, position, apology, but she refused. "I already got what I wanted," she said. The truth. Before leaving, she left behind a small note for the Empire's archives. The humans didn't return to take control. They returned to remind us that we are not the beginning. We are not the only voice in the galaxy. Others came before us, and some of them still remember what we chose to forget. In the months that followed, the Empire changed quietly. It began removing false history from its records. Some hidden truths were made public. Young officers were taught not just about Empire victories, but also about the old stories. The warnings. The lessons. The word Terran was no longer spoken in fear but in awe. And even though the human ship never returned, its presence was felt across the stars. Rumors spread. Tales were told of a black ship that drifted like a ghost, of a war that never happened because the other side didn't need to fight, of humans who left the galaxy not because they lost, but because they chose a different path, a higher path, and they had only returned for one reason: not to destroy, not to conquer, but to reclaim a piece of who they once were, and to remind the Empire, they were never gone, only silent, only watching, and sometimes the ones who are silent the longest, are the ones who shape the future.